So as I said, I will quickly start the session. Sorry for the delay. My name is Anand Lala. Just for the benefit of everyone who joined late, I head the business development at Edelweiss Asset Services. I'll quickly will cover. We as a cohort partners, we will be primarily focusing on the custody aspect, and we will take you through how the custody operates. I'll try to keep it as simple as possible for everyone, so that people who are completely new to the in terms of the understanding, I understand the audience would be mixed here. Some of the guys would already have an idea as to how the fund industry works, but the others who are especially new and who have no idea as to what is the role and importance of the custodian, I'll quickly try to keep it as simple as that possible. What we can also do is that you guys, in case if you have any questions, please feel free to put that in the chat window. We'll cover this session in 40-45 minutes, and in the end we'll have the question and answers round, covering all your questions on the custody part. As I said that we offer at Edelweiss Asset Services, we offer bespoke custody and clearing solutions. We have an integrated digital platform with the order management system, which is a front-end system which some of the portfolio managers need. And we also provide the fund accounting services. So this is a brief introduction about Edelweiss Wealth Management. I just take a minute here because there has been a deal last year, and this is again for the benefit of everyone who is there on the call, just to understand what part of the business we represent. So we are part of Edelweiss Wealth Management. The Pacific Asia Group last year has acquired a majority stake in the Edelweiss Wealth Management business. So they now own approximately 56% stake. And just to give you an idea on PAG, it is one of the largest Asia's focused private investment firms, managing assets close to around $40 billion. And what will also happen is Edelweiss Wealth Management would get demerged. The demerger approval is already there in the place. And we will be getting listed separately on the stock exchanges. Quickly to cover just some of the businesses which fall under Edelweiss Wealth Management. Of course, the wealth management business, we are the second largest, managing or advising assets over 2 lakh crores. And we are the second largest independent wealth management player. On the institution security side, we have Edelweiss Asset Services, which provides the custody, clearing, and the fund accounting services. And of course, we are also one of the largest domestic institution brokerage house, having a market share of over 5%. On the advisory business, we have a market share of 3.5% on the respective businesses. And we for the debt, specifically for the debt issues which come in the market, we have been ranked first. Also, we have an investment banking unit under this business, and this is we are active player in the capital markets. Quickly moving on to the next slide about Edelweiss Asset Services, which is part of EWM or the Edelweiss Wealth Management. The idea of this business was we need to focus, or when we started the business, the idea was to allow the fund managers to focus on their core, which is the research and the fundraising, and allow or take away their basically non-core operation works. And that's the reason we meet the evolving need of the asset managers like you by offering them our suite of services, which we have integrated. We mainly believe in building long-term relationships by offering our clients a strategic advice. The differentiator or the where we stand out is basically we are very nimble in terms of accepting the client feedback and providing them customization as and when they need. So primary two offerings on the custody side or the two verticals under the custody side. I'm just highlighting this so that you understand what all comes under the custody ambit. So primarily it's the international division and the domestic division. I had the domestic institution client group. So basically addressing the mutual funds, insurance companies, PMS, AIF custody requirements. Similarly, we also have a foreign vertical. We are a registered designated depository participant to issue any FPI license. And we have a complete offering on both the sides, on the international as well as the domestic side, where we advise FPIs as well as the fund managers who are very new how to go about registering a fund or making a fund. What are different advantages? What is the role of custodian? And of course, the basic core offering is the custody and the clearing services. The clients or the funds like you can also avail or take advantage of the execution services at our end. On the domestic side, primarily we advise the clients and also provide them the digital onboarding solution for onboarding their clients through the integrated offering which we have done on the custody side. So this mainly sums up what we do. I will now mainly focus on the custody offering and primarily give you an idea as to how we go about or how the clients approach us. We as a cohort partner would be focusing again on the custody services today. And on the next slide after this, I'll just go detail as to what is the role of the custodian and what does a custodian primarily do. So here, as I said, anyone who looks to start up a fund usually looks at an advisory service as to what are the different stakeholders whom they need to connect with, and that is where we come into the picture. Just because you would have attended Rajesh Bhai's session yesterday, some of you guys would have attended, and we work closely with most of the cohort partners here. And that is how the integration between us happen. So I also have on the call, I forgot to introduce, I also have Sailesh Gupta from our team. Basically, he looks at the channel partner relationships, and whenever a client needs to get connected, we do refer it to the channel partners whom we work closely with. So the idea is to help you without you wasting your time running here and there, finding the right guys. We help you connect with the relevant stakeholders and help you in making a fund quickly as soon as possible. So that's on the advisory side. Of course, from a custody custody services point of view, we have a complete integrated offering. I'll cover that quickly on my next slide. The primary objective is to do the safekeeping, do the settlement, and track the corporate actions. Ideally, take away all the non-core operations work, which otherwise a team would like to, a fund team would have to focus on. We also have, or we are also the first ones to make a front-end system for the industry where US fund managers can access or place the orders or order management system, as we say. We can help you in terms of the client allocation as far as the PMS is concerned. And from AIF point of view, it can be used both for derivatives as well as placing orders on the equity side. Again, we are one of the largest player on the derivative clearing side. We are a professional clearing member having a market share of 12%. So anyone, basically the derivative services are used. Why we have mentioned clearing here? Because for the cash trades, a custodian comes into the picture. For derivatives trades, a clearing member has to be appointed by a fund, and hence the necessity or the requirement of a clearing member. So we are a professional clearing member. Of course, we also deliver this to our platform. As I said, that any one of you can use the platform and use our execution services, either the investment banking services. So you can consider as a platform using different services as and when in the life cycle of your fund you might have the need for. Quickly, we do offer the fund accounting, but again, from the next slide, I would be focusing or saying more on the custody services. So who are the different stakeholders? And this slide basically sums up and covers what a custodian does, what a clearing member, and ideally what the broker's role is. So once the fund is registered and the fund is formed, what the role of the custodian will come into the play. As I said in the beginning, for the guys, anyone who is making a mutual fund as an insurance scheme, or basically a PMS and AIF. Largely, we have been focusing on the PMS and AIF because that is where we have seen the growth coming in. What a custodian does primarily for all of these segments is the custodian acts in a fiduciary capacity and only acts on the instructions of the client. So when I say client, it could be a PMS or it could be an AIF fund. The primary role of the custodian, which I covered, but I'll go into detail, is to do the safekeeping of the client's assets. So what typically happens in case of an AIF, when you get onboarded with a custodian, your bank account, a pool bank account is open and a pool demat account is open. And the pool demat account and the bank account remains with the custodian. It is executed on the basis of a power of attorney, which is signed between the fund, AIF, PMS, and the custodian. And we only do the safekeeping of all the assets, and we only act once we get an instruction from the fund manager. The other important role, at least in the listed equity space, what you have seen is tracking of the corporate actions. So the fund manager need not worry about tracking the rights issue or any special situation which might come into the play. Each and everything is tracked by the custodian, and the relevant reports are shared at the end of the day. Again, trade matching and confirmation. So there is a concept of three-way trade matching, which I'll cover in the subsequent slide. The idea here is to once a PMS or AIF gets or onboarded with a custodian, they get a custodian participant code, and all the trades are executed with different brokers or trading members using that code. So there is a matching and confirmation through the exchange as well as the contract note provided by the broker, and that is how the matching of the trades is done. Again, coming back to the settlement of trades, we simply we pull out the money from your bank account where the fund money are pooled in, and we make the relevant payment to the exchanges. So let's take a simple example. If it's listed equities and a fund has done a trade buying a particular security, so based on the instruction of the fund and this amount which we get, we probably will debit the account of the fund and make the payment to the exchanges. On T+2, when we get the stocks, it will lie. We will ensure that it goes and sits on the demat account of the fund. And all this can be seen by the fund managers through the various reports which are shared by the end of the day. Of course, we have, as I said, that our platform is integrated. We used a web custody version, so we basically allow you to access everything through a web portal, and I'll also cover that on a subsequent slide. Again, the reporting of the transactions, the record keeping, compliant with various regulatory stipulations in case if there is any. So as simple as that, in AIF category 3, there's a restriction of 10% holding. So the primary responsibility, of course, is on the fund. But once the breach happens, of course, the custodian also informs the fund that there has been a breach, and probably that can be corrected. The second important relevant stakeholder, as I said, that this for basically the derivatives trades is a clearing member. I'm repeating, we are again a professional clearing member. So we don't do any proprietary trades. We only clear the trades for or on behalf of all the funds. So here the primary responsibility of the clearing member again is to ensure that the respective required margins for the derivative trades are collected, and the reporting of the same is done with the clearing member. That includes the trade confirmation, the settlement of the trade obligation, sharing the daily reports with the regulators and of course with the clients, and doing the record keeping of all the transactions. Broker again, how the broker comes into the picture is the client or the PMS or a custodian is is broker neutral. I mean, you can trade with any broker, multiple brokers we would like to trade. So here the trade is done as per the client's instruction to the broker. The fund would have done the trade with them. Post 3:30, the dissemination of the information or the trade information comes to custodian. So one is through the exchange using the CP codes, and other is through the contract notes, and third would be through the instructions given by the client. So again, we do the margin collection, reporting, and the settlement at the end of the trades once the trades are done. So these are the three relevant stakeholders which are important. Setting up a fund with a custodian. These are the following steps. I'll quickly again keep it as simple as possible. As I mentioned earlier, the first and the foremost step, once you get a license and you have appointed a custodian, the first step is to set up a bank account. So what a custodian would do is that they'll open a bank account, and post that, once the bank account is live, the demat account will be open subsequently. So all this takes around roughly, you can expect 5 days, 4 to 5 days for a bank account, and 2 days for the demat account. So in 7 working days, you can say that your fund would be live. once you have got the license and you have all the, fill the relevant forms and you've started the onboarding process. So we also allot a custodian participant code. I also mentioned about this. So this is a unique code for the fund, which is given by the exchange. Second step is that you can start your operations the moment you have got the CP code live. What I mean by that is that you can tell the clients to transfer the money, pool in money in the fund. So I'll again come on the onboarding part here a bit later, but ideally what it means is that your inflow and outflow can happen from basically the bank account which you have opened. Step 3, again, initiation of operational activities, allowing sharing and allowing the instruction templates to follow up with all the relevant stakeholders. What I simply mean here is that you can give us instructions to operate as and when the trades are done, and make the payments to the clients in case if there is any corporate action. Step 4 is the access of the data. Again, all through the web portal, all the custody and the reports are available to the fund managers, so that at the end of the day, once the EOD process is run, a fund manager can view what are the trades done. So there are different kinds of reports. I'll not go much detail into that, but any of you, one can later if you want to know that what are details available, we'll be more than happy to take you through the platform. And again, step 5 is it's the information which you would be sharing with the clients and which would be available to you. That also is provided by the custodian. This is one of the important questions which we really face. What is the need and the benefit of having a custodian? And I'll just share, and I'll be very honest in terms of sharing my experience. In the last 5 years, I've been associated with Edelweiss. We have built this business from scratch. And my background or the experience has been on the fund side, on the research side. And since I've been with Edelweiss, I've understood what are the pain points of the fund managers like you, and what is the actual advantage of having a custodian. So I'll first cover what the regulation says. The regulation says that for category 3 funds, it is compulsory to have a custodian from day one. Similar is the case with PMS. For category F 1 and 2, there are some thresholds. But what we have seen from the industry, larger institutions, and basically fund managers, serious fund managers like you who are attending this session, do appoint the custodian from day one, because it gives the confidence to the end investor. And again, it depends what kind of investors you have. You could have family offices, you could have foreign portfolio investors, you could have domestic investors. And what we have seen since 2018, post the ILFS crisis, the investors do demand and do ask basically even the distributors that is there a custodian present with the fund or not. So it's always there's always a benefit of having a custodian, primarily from a point of view that your non-core work or the operation work is taken care by them. And of course, from a good corporate governance practice, so the clients also appreciate that. Again, ease of operations is one of the most of the teams which we have seen. There have been mutual fund managers. There have been, of late from 2015, we have seen this trend where many mutual fund managers or fund managers basically, or basically hedge fund managers, or who have a reasonable experience in the industry or investing, they have made PMSs, they have made AIFs. In fact, there are many brokers, individual investors, or larger houses, broking houses, are looking at making mutual funds also. So what we have also seen is that it allows them to outsource a lot of work at a very reasonable cost, and all the headache is taken care by the custodian. So two things here: there could be people who would have a lean team and they would not like to invest immediately. They would like to focus on the core work of research, and that is where a custodian helps them. Again, as I mentioned, confidence to investors is one of the most important things. And again, the bespoke reporting is something which talks about the accessing of different reports which are available to the client using a custodian. Cost saving and error-free transactions, as I've said, that it's one of the prime advantages, because the fee at which the custodian operates is something which is not which doesn't pinch to the end investors. And of course, you as fund managers can recover that from the end client. So you may choose to recover it, or you may choose to bear it on their own, but this is something which we have seen doesn't hurt the end investors or the fund houses. All right, so here I'll go more on in terms of the systems which we use and what we have, so that you have an idea from custody services point of view. What all aspects you need to take into consider, keep in mind, basically. So what does a custodian primarily do is that they coordinate with the various stakeholders, like brokers, the auditors, banks, clearing member, and this is primarily done for settling your transactions. Again, I'll quickly say the primary objective is to safekeep the assets. This is a completely ring-fence business and is well regulated. We have our audits done by the regulators. So everything is ensured that whatever the funds are, they belong to the fund. Nothing affects them. Similarly, whatever the shares are, they belong to the fund via a custodian. Again, what depends is what kind of software we are using. So I'll just give you an example. What we use at Edelweiss is we use Intellect Design. I'm just trying to highlight here what is important is the robustness of the system, because the system should be robust enough to handle the load. And as the custodian scales up, has number of clients, probably that process should be seamless. Apart from that, the system should also be able to provide transactions for different asset classes. While I've been talking more on basically equities, a custodian can, or there are different asset classes which a fund house can trade and use the custodian, maybe REITs, maybe mutual funds, funds of funds, commodities, to just give you another example. So different asset classes are settled by a custodian, and that is where a robust system helps us. So we use Intellect Design, which is also used by most of the multinationals here in India. And it has various advantages. At least you can be rest assured that at any point of time, the system will not be down, and you at any point of time will get the relevant reports. What we have also done is there is a dedicated client servicing team which we have formed. So once a client gets onboarded, we assign a client servicing relationship manager who is a SPOC or one point of contact. And from your side, either the operations guy or the fund manager just needs to interact with that one person, and the client servicing RM will then go ahead basically and internally get your query resolved. So this is just again to save your time, basically, where you don't have to interact with multiple guys within an organization. And we have thought about this because it helps the client in interacting with one person and saves their time. Again, what a robust system does it that it helps to capture the corporate actions most of the places. And this is a very, very important function, because fund manager can take or invest in a security depending or play out a special situation. And the special situations we have seen in the last 4 years have come out in plenty, where there are buybacks, there are bonuses, there are demergers, or there are mergers basically. And to take this advantage, the corporate action tracking is very, very important. Again, the proxy services can also be provided by a custodian in case if a fund house is not able to attend a meeting as a shareholder. So again, I've talked about the mutual fund transactions. So there are different asset classes which primarily custodian or a good system can help you with, and that is a prime advantage of having a good system. There is again a three-way reconciliation which a custodian does, which ensures that the trade which is done by the fund manager or the fund house itself, and there is no error trade. The web custody part, I was just mentioning it earlier, that I'll elaborate that. So basically, the Intellect Design or the system which we use gives you one window which allows you to upload the transactions and have access to different reports. So you can upload the transactions which otherwise you would be sending through emails. So this, as simple as that, it saves a lot of to and fro of emails which can be missed out by a person, and an error can occur. So it's an interface where you upload the transactions. It can be seen at the back end at our side. And once you click an OK, the transaction process begins from the next moment. And not only that, it helps you to access the reports, which is most important part. Plus, a custodian does a recon of your bank and the demat account on a daily basis to ensure that all the transactions which have happened in the past or are in process are basically settled, and the fund manager has the right information. So this is quickly the features. I'll just quickly run you through this. It gives you the corporate action, the fund transfer, what it does and what are the reports. It helps address if you have any query, probably you can just post that in a web custody chat window and probably we can come back to you. It helps you, it helps you communicate and all the relevant updates, whether it's regulatory update, if a share gets excluded from a particular category, all the regulatory updates can be done through this system also. Plus, there are 20 plus reports. As I said, that any one of you, if you need to understand more about this, we can discuss it later. But there are various kind of reports which are accessible to the fund manager, and it's just a one place where you can access everything. Of course, you can also initiate the fund transfers through this rather than sending separate instructions on emails. Again, this is the most important part, at least on the PMS side, and some of the guys whom you know, or through your connects whom you know that they are running a PMS would have faced difficulties in the past, but no longer, because COVID was actually a blessing in disguise, where we were able to go live with a digital onboarding platform. And I'll quickly cover, and this platform works superbly for AIFs as well as PMS guys who want to onboard their clients digitally without having the paperwork. And of course, you can have your connects family members across India. So if you're based out of Mumbai and if you have a client in Northeast, through a simple process, the onboarding of the client can run. So I'll quickly first cover what it does simply, while you can just read what is there, but what happens in case of AIF and what happens in case of PMS. So in AIF, how can you onboard the clients digitally is as simple as the platform allows you to create a template of your contribution agreement, which is signed by you as a fund house and your end client. So it allows you to create that template. And once that template is present, suppose tomorrow, if I want to become your client and I want to invest in your fund, using my Aadhaar and PAN card, which are the basic details which any from a KYC perspective a fund house might ask, the data gets pre-filled on the form. Some of the relevant data like the risk profiling, the net worth requirements as a fund house, you can complete it because you know your client very well. And once that is done, the form is generated, and through Aadhaar-based OTP verification, the e-sign is done on the entire contribution agreement. So, I mean, just imagine the physical process where you'll courier the phone or you'll have to make the client understand. This can simply be done in a day if the client is tech savvy, or if you educate a client in the beginning. Trust me, this works very well. In fact, some of the clients who have gone, most of the clients who are going live on this are really appreciating as they are using it. So there are all kinds of checks in terms of the AML which are performed at the time of onboarding the client. So you also need not worry, because at some point of time, if there is an AML hit which comes up from a regulatory standpoint of view, most of the things are covered. So you also need to keep in mind at the time of understanding the custodian software or what they use, the platform which they use, is what kind of compliances and the regulations the system do cover. Because as once you get a license, you also have the fiduciary responsibility to do the KYC of the clients, the end clients which you onboard. So just keep this in mind, because most of the latest systems which we have cover all these aspects, and this have also been well appreciated by the client. I'll also cover this very quickly. Again, on the derivatives clearing side, this is primarily for someone who has launched a fund and is using derivatives. I'm just repeating that so that you don't get confused that in what way clearing is different from custody. So it goes hands in hand. I've seen the funds specifically, at least on the PMS side, who have been using derivatives smartly, and they have been rewarded in this downfall where they would have hedged their portfolio by using derivatives options. So that is where the role of a clearing member comes. We do provide clearing services to the institution, whether it's FPI. Again, I'm reiterating, we're a professional clearing member. Just to give you some idea, there are 3 categories of clearing members. One is a self-clearing member. So brokers can be the self-clearing members and they can clear the trades themselves. There is another category which is called trading cum clearing member. So a broker can also be a clearing member as well. They can clear their own proprietary trades also. However, there is a risk involved in that in terms of using the collateral. However, that risk has gone away right now, and most of the guys are moving to the professional clearing member, because then it assures you as a fund that if you have chosen Edelweiss as a professional clearing member, they will not clear or not do any of their prop trades. So it's just the client's trades which they are clearing as a fiduciary, and the reporting is done to the clearing corporation. So again, we have a very robust system, risk management system, which we have developed in-house. And this is shared and given to the clients. Basically, it helps you to see the live, or maybe say with a lag of minute, the live margins which you might have on your positions. So in case of volatility, or where the recent scenario is where the volatility is very high, it helps you to quickly wind up the positions or take fresh positions depending on the cash or the margins which you might have already deployed. And it's an online real-time risk monitoring system. Helps you to also manage your collateral. We have close to around 13,000 crores of margin, which is placed with the clearing corporation. And in terms of the market share, we would be close to around 12%, 12.5%. So again, the differentiating factor here is that we do have a dedicated client servicing team here. So again, you have a one-point contact which deals with whom you can deal with. So very, very important if someone is only focusing on derivatives, using a custodian as well as a clearing member together. So I have covered up most of the things here. If you guys have questions, I'll just ask Udit, my colleague here, to add up something in case if you would have missed up, if I would have missed anything, and probably we can open for question and answers round. I'll just look at the chat box also for the different questions which have come up. Udit, if you want to add anything, probably you can chip in.
You've covered quite well. If there are any queries, we'll be happy to take that up now. There's one query from Zahra about data privacy. So I'll start with that, and any other questions can follow. So what we do is, data privacy is managed on 2-3 different levels. One is the physical security of the workspace. So wherever the machines are being operated and the employees are working on the data, those areas are demarcated with access control. So only the people who are working on those data can access that area, right? Secondly, the machines that they work on are completely controlled by the tech team and the information security group. So no external emails, no access to any websites, etc., where data can be pasted. There are checks in place where no data can be copy pasted anywhere, or no files can be sent out. Also, obviously, in terms of emails, there is restriction on who the emails can be sent to. So there is a whitelist of emails, and emails can only be sent to that whitelist. So when a client gets added, that whitelist is updated, and only the data can only be sent to those clients that they're working for. So this is how we ensure data privacy. There's some amount of data masking also that happens when people who are not directly working on the data. So there's the operations team that needs to be able to see the data because they're processing transactions, they're preparing reports. Anybody else for, let's say, billing purposes, etc., they only see the masked data in terms of, let's say, volumes, if there's a volume related to billing, for example, or if there's a number of transactions. So they will only see that. They will not see what the transactions are, or the underlying of the transactions. So wherever required, data masking is done. And then there are access controls, both physical and digital, to ensure that data does not go out of the system. For a Cat 2 AIF, what are the advantages of having a custodian? So as Anand mentioned, when you start off, when you're below the threshold of 500 crores, it is not compulsory to have a custodian. However, what a custodian does is, typically if you're starting off as a lean team, to have a maker and checker for each transaction might be a little difficult with a smaller team. Also, having a custodian ensures that any regulatory aspects that you're looking at or you might miss out on, those controls are monitored by the custodian as well. Wherever we have the information, we will monitor it. If you're kind of digressing from the regulations, we sometimes are able to let you know in advance of the transaction getting booked, if we have the information, so that you can course correct and ensure that you don't breach the regulations. Also, from a corporate governance perspective, if the investors see that there is a custodian that's managing the assets and it's not the fund management team that's operating the bank account and the demat account, it gives them a lot of comfort. And obviously, as you gain more traction and you get some more reputation and size, these concerns do go away to a large extent. But with institutional investors coming in, these concerns will typically always be there. And especially when you're starting off, it might be more of a concern than when you're an established player. So yeah, basically operational, corporate governance, convenience, and even from a cost perspective. So there is a related question to this. So I'll kind of try and answer both. Typically, custody services are built in BIPs. Now, it could be 1 BIP, 2 BIP, 3 BIP, depending on the complexity of the work involved, the scope of the work involved. Sometimes there is a fixed charge as well on an annual basis if it's very minimal work. So the models are fairly negotiable and determined on the basis of the actual work involved, could be fixed or variable. Typically, Cat 3 is always variable, and Cat 1 and 2 can either be fixed or variable. But these charges, custody charges, fund accounting charges, etc., they can be a part of your expense ratio. These need not be borne by the fund manager. So typically these are billed to the fund and not to the fund manager. Hence, they become part of the cost ratio. And in BIPs, because they're quite small, generally it does not bump up your cost ratio significantly. So instead of having the person in your in the fund management entity who's doing all these things in-house, let's say a fund accounting team or a person handling the bank account, demat accounts, along with reconciliations, it may be better even from a cost perspective initially to at least hive it off to a counterpart. And globally also, if you see, there is a lot of focus on outsourcing, because generally it's simply a matter of scale, wherein your team might look at 1, 2, 3 funds. A typical person at a shop may be looking at 5 or 6 funds at an average, maybe more depending on the fund. So it gives you that benefit of scale.
So there is, thanks Udit, there is one question I think which Pramod has asked, that what he basically asking that at least a CKYC registration can be done away with some other intermediary also if they're appointed. What are the other internal checks or the compliances? This is what I assume he's trying to ask. The AIF needs to take care of. So Pramod, a very good question. In fact, that is what we have realized. And as Udit mentioned is that from you as a fund house, you'd like to try to outsource as much as possible. And there are many other compliances which as a fund house you need to follow. Simply the AML part, as I mentioned earlier, the scores, which is a one-time registration and so on. I can cover one-on-one with you separately. And of course, share with others also if they want to know more about it. But the idea again here is that you need to understand that what all a custodian can help you with, and what then falls under your ambit when you are taking a decision. So typically, these are the common questions which we have seen, which comes up from other guys as well. So I can connect with you offline and we'll take this separately just to understand more on what exactly you're looking at.
And there's a question, how is DMAT different from custody? So see, the DMAT service is basically your NSDL, CDSL. You have DMAT service providers. So most of your brokers are DMAT service providers. And let's say some banks who are also brokers might be there. Now, that is only the DMAT. But what a custodian does is it will operate the DMAT account and bank account on your behalf under a power of attorney. So it settles the transactions. The custodian also allows you to deal with multiple brokers, multiple asset classes. So you don't have to settle with, let's say, each AMC separately, or you can just do the trade with the AMC or with the broker, and then the trade will come to us for settlement. Similarly, we will have the systems to we will already have the systems to generate a report like a custodian will have. Plus, there's reporting that needs to be done to SEBI and other counterparties as well. Some of the reports that you as a fund manager need to submit also typically will be provided by a custodian if you've agreed that with the custodian. Also, any kind of advice. So sometimes we are, that in terms of corporate action, we definitely track the corporate actions, give impact of it. There are voluntary and involuntary corporate actions. So voluntary is where you can choose whether to participate in it or not, like a buyback or an offer for sale. Or if there are involuntary, like a bonus or a dividend. So they will irrespective hit your account, but they need to be accounted for. The information needs to be passed on to the fund accountant so that there is no mismatch in NAV reporting, etc., because that can have serious impact on the credibility of the fund as well and could lead to possible legal issues with the investors as well. So a custodian effectively is a regulatory requirement in part, and where it's not a regulatory requirement, it can help you operationally as well in taking care of the day-to-day operations. So as Anand mentioned, like for us also, we believe that the alternate space will expand greatly in India. The fund managers are typically going to be at least starting off with a lean team, and they will want to effectively focus on investors and investments. And our idea is to create the entire ecosystem around the alternate space, so that we take care of everything else operationally, either directly by having the service in-house with us, or by working very closely with partners, so that, let's say our customer servicing team, client servicing team will be the only point of contact that you need to get in touch with, even if, let's say, you have an issue with your RTA or with somebody else. So you need not go run after multiple vendors. Everything will be handled by RT. So that's what we are working towards. And I think that's where the future of the industry is. Globally, it's already kind of moving towards that, or has moved towards it. In India, like basically what a fund admin does globally. That's what eventually will happen on the India side of it as well. And that's what our plan is, and that's what we're working towards. Charmi has a question. What will be your advice for incorporation of AIF? Not quite sure about the exact thing. Whether you mean, what kind of structure should you adopt, like an LLP or a trust or a corporate, or which type of AIF. But see, broadly, this would have been covered ideally by Rajesh ji yesterday. Otherwise, if you're looking at doing it as a trust, yeah. So whether you want to do LLP or trust or corporate will depend on the kind of investors that you have and what you're looking at doing, what is your aim in doing it. LLP, the advantage is largely from a tax perspective, not really any other significant advantages. Compliance wise, it is maybe a little bit lower, but the kind of updates that you have to do every time you bring in or take out an investor, that kind of counters any other advantages that you might have from a compliance perspective. So there is some tax advantage if you're doing derivatives. If you're doing only cash equities, then you can segregate your portfolio between long-term and short-term, even open separate demat accounts, which we do. And that can largely take care of your tax concerns. So while it has not been tested really, a lot of scrutinies, etc., have happened, or other assessments have happened from a tax perspective, and people have been fine. They've not faced any issues till now, but it is untested. In case there is a claim or a dispute raised by the income tax department, no one knows exactly how it's going to play out. But since it's such a large industry practice, people are kind of putting their faith in that structure. So if you're doing derivatives, then obviously as a trust, you get taxed very heavily, upwards of 34%. When you do an LLP, it reduces it. Corporate structure, while it's allowed, we've not really seen it. It's extremely difficult to set up. Unwind is, even bigger problem, because sometimes companies can take 5-10 years to unwind as well as a corporate. So from a winding up perspective, it does not really make sense, or from most other perspectives, doesn't make sense to do it from a corporate point of view, unless there's a very specific problem that you might have that can get addressed to the corporate route. Hopefully that answers. Yeah.
With two again relevant and very important questions, of course, which we have also been facing earlier. So this question is from Zara. I hope I'm pronouncing the name properly. Zara Sharif, and the question is on the safeguards around the client data privacy. And who bears the liability in case of breaches. So I just like to tell one point here is that this is most of the common question which you have been facing. All of you guys who are present on the call or making a fund just needs to check the processes and the system or the compliances which the custodian is following. So just to give you an example, you need to know that what are kind of audits which a custodian go through. I can just share what we basically do, and what we do is that we have our operations team, custody operations team, completely ring fenced. So even the business development team. So if I represent the business, I don't have access to the client's data. And in case if I need something, that has to happen over an email. Again, from a larger perspective, while I'm saying this verbally, we also go ahead and give confidence to the clients, and we are okay to sign the NDA or a non-disclosure agreement also, just to assure that we are meeting and completely aware about the privacy and the data of their end clients. That was the one question, and a subsequent question from him is about the portability. Once you sign up with the custodian, how easy or difficult it is to switch to another custodian. There are no lock-ins here, but again, it would depend what kind of fund you are. And what is the reason of moving out. And that is where, again, I would just like to reiterate that before choosing a custodian, you need to understand and just do the due diligence in whatever way, what are the systems, best processes which they are following. If that is taken care at the beginning, then I think this situation will not arise. But the portability can be done, to answer your question. It is not at all difficult. For PMS, it is difficult. For AIF, it is not of difficult. So there have been many cases of migration which we have done in the last 3-4 years, specifically on the AIF side. I hope that answers your question. Udit, one question I feel from Jayesh is basically, how does an AIF dealing in both Indian and international securities work with a custodian? So I think he's asking from a GIFT City point of view. Again, just for the benefit of everyone, while I would have missed earlier, we also help the clients, and we can act as a custodian for anyone who is setting up a fund in GIFT City. So how does the role or the work of custodian change in that case? I would say it doesn't change in a very big way because, of course, at least the India-bound investments, see, again, the primary role is to settle the transactions and facilitate and ensure that the securities sit with the custodian and provide you all the relevant reports. So we as a custodian can do all that. So primarily, nothing changes. I can say from it could depend on the asset class where you are investing. So for example, in case if you want to do commodities, probably there's a separate license which a custodian needs to take. So I just gave an example of a commodity investment, right? And you can add here. So we have recently got that license. So once if a custodian has a license, only then they can basically settle the trades related to commodity or the investments related to commodity. So that's it. Otherwise, if you want to invest outside India also, a custodian can facilitate you. We can again just, as I said, that discuss this in detail one-on-one later and help you address your query in case if you have anything else to ask.
So so there are two aspects. One, if it's a domestic AIF looking to invest overseas, in that case, for your domestic investments, the India custodian will still be doing the custody. When you're investing overseas, it will depend on the jurisdiction where you're investing in. whether that jurisdiction mandates a local custodian like India. When an FPI invests into India, having a custodian is mandatory. Similarly, when the AIF is investing overseas, it will depend on the particular jurisdiction whether having a custodian is mandatory or not. If the custodian is mandatory, then it will have to be appointed. It will be a separate appointment altogether from the Indian appointment. Or else, if it's not required, you can just have the assets lie with the broker, or you can choose to appoint a custodian voluntarily as well. Pretty much the same for a GIFT City fund as well. For a GIFT City fund, for India-bound investments, it will invest as an FPI if they are coming through the FPI route, or for other investments like FDI, etc. Then they don't need a custodian in India. For FPI investments, basically into listed instruments, they will have to appoint a custodian in India. For if they are investing in any instruments that are listed in GIFT City and not derivatives. For derivatives, you need only a clearing member in GIFT City. If you are investing in any non-derivative instruments which are in DMAT form, then you need to have a custodian in IFSC. And the same logic that goes for domestic AIFs investing overseas will go that if the custodian is mandated by the investee jurisdiction, then you'll have to appoint one locally, or you can choose to either have or not have a custodian.
Udit, again, a question related to this on the GIFT City by Somali, but I think that's more to do with the tax aspect. But however, I'll read it just for the benefit of everyone. What he's asked is that they're planning to set up two VC funds. One SEBI registered, what he means is the domestic AIF, and the other GIFT City fund. Now, the GIFT City, I think what is written is initially they thought there are a lot of tax benefits for LPs, but actually it is not. Can you please help us with any distinct advantage which GIFT City fund has compared to SEBI registered fund? So, Somali, first I would like to say that this is more, the question is more relevant to Rajesh Bhai from Deloitte, who is again one of the Cohort partners. And we'll actually pass it on to you, and or probably if you're not connected, we'll tell Aditya to get him connected to you. But what I can tell you is that, of course, these two funds are completely separate. GIFT City is basically a fund to access foreign capital. Being in India, it has been given an offshore, basically SEZ or offshore jurisdiction here in India. So primarily to accept and have the access to foreign capital in coming and investing in India, or maybe from there investing abroad. So it cannot be compared similarly. And there could be tax benefits, as Udit also mentioned, for some of the guys dealing in derivatives in GIFT Cities. But what we'll do, it is better that you speak with Rajesh Bhai, and he'll be able to address this. I hope it gives you some idea on this.
And one thing to keep in mind here is that if you are setting up a fund in IFSC, you cannot raise money from India using the LRS route and then invest that money back into India.
Correct.
Right? So that is called round tripping and strictly not allowed. So if you're raising money through the LRS route from India, then the money has to be invested overseas. It cannot be invested back into India. So unless you have overseas investors, then you are essentially only looking at the domestic fund if you're looking to invest domestically. If you're looking at overseas money, then even then the advantage would largely be from a GP perspective, where as a fund manager, you will get a lot of tax incentives by being based out of there. But as an LP, you will not have too many tax incentives.
Udit, again, one very relevant point here, which is asked by Zara. Just for the benefit of everyone, I'll cover this. And I think it can be useful to everyone here. I did mention about the mutual funds, AIFs, PMSs, who primarily use a custodian, but there is a different segment like family offices or a single large institution investor, or maybe ultra HNI person, maybe like Rakesh Jinwala. I'm just naming him because tomorrow or today he can also avail a custodian participant code and use the custodian setup, specifically keeping in mind the margin requirements and other regulations which have come for trading. So the question of Zara is, for a single large international institutional managed account, how different would things be compared to custodian services for an AIF?
So if it's an institutional investor, the investor would have to come into India, or any other international investor. If they plan to invest into India directly, they would have to come in through the FPI route. So, depending on what kind of structure they have, it would be a Cat 1 or Cat 2 FPI. And in that case, if you're planning to advise them, then you would have to get a special tax exemption that would allow you to advise overseas money. There are a lot of restrictions and conditions associated with it. So it's not very easy to do it, especially if you want a tax break on it. Otherwise, you can act as an advisor to the fund if you have the advisory license here in India. And if the overseas jurisdiction where the client is located in allows the client to take advice from an overseas advisor. So there have to be marketing compliances that will need to be looked at as well. So that differs from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, but you can advise it. The whatever money that comes in terms of advisory fee would in that case be fully taxable in India, unless you take the you qualify for and take the 9A exemption from the tax department.
Udit, again, two relevant questions for you. Specifically, can an AIF category 3 fund trade future contracts on international commodities, on CME, LME, etc.?
No. So even if you use the LRS route, which is there for primarily individuals, etc., you are only allowed to invest in securities. So you are allowed to invest, you're not allowed to trade. So derivatives are typically not allowed when you're investing overseas. So these have to be investments and not trades.
And again, a question by Pramod asking, I'm not sure what is written, but I'll just try to read it the verbatim as it is. In a warehouse investments by AIF before initial fund closures, what are the role of custodian in these transactions? I am not able to.
If I understand it correctly, these are trades that, let's say the fund management entity or somebody else would get in to kind of secure the investment. And then once the money flows into the AIF, then there would be a trade between that other entity and the AIF. In that case, typically the custodian will not have any role to play. When the transaction is happening between the warehousing entity and the fund, that's where the custodian will settle the trade with the warehousing entity, if that's the case. Or alternatively, if you want to ensure like a proper track, etc., that warehousing entity could also appoint a custodian and have all the reports available from the custodian, so that purchase price, sale price, etc., are all available, documented by a regulated counterparty. And it'll be easy for you to demonstrate that the pass-through kind of has happened, and no significant or no non-related party kind of transaction has happened. But this will have to be seen in terms of particular, like what is the specific investment, what are the other situation around it. So while it's a generic answer, each specific case will have to be inspected separately.
Well, there's a basic question asking how does the role of a trustee and a custodian vary? I think trustee is just a legal representative of the fund, and any liability as far as the fund is concerned, the trustee is solely responsible for it. And from a custodian standpoint of view, I have already mentioned the benefits that they basically take care of all the outsourcing, the settlement part, corporate action tracking, doing the safekeeping, and that's the basic difference between both of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's partly to do with the structure. If you would do an LLP, then there would be no trustee. So it's not like the trustee is compulsory for an AIF. It's because of the structure that is allowed. Trust offers a lot of benefits in terms of the structure, and hence it's it's mostly about 99.5% or more of the funds would be in the trust structure, right? Besides that, the trustee technically is a representative of the investors, so it's supposed to be independent even from the investment manager. The appointment of the investment manager, for example, typically would be the role of the trustee. a lot of documentation, signing off on the audited financials of the fund, etc. If there's any major decision, depending on what is specified in the trust deed and your agreement, PPM, etc. Certain things have to be signed off by the trustee. So the trustee has an important role to play, and from earlier it was purely a contractual relationship between the beneficiaries of the trust, which is the investors, the investment manager, and the trustee. But increasingly, the role of the trustee is getting guided a lot by the regulator as well. And SEBI has come out with like a code of conduct for the trustees, certain responsibilities that are there. If there are any issues with the fund, a lot of questions do come directly to the trustees as well. So their role is evolving and becoming more important. So it's quite important that you choose a specialist trustee that has a decent amount of experience for the kind of AIF that you're planning to launch. That would help.
Well, we covered most of the questions here. I'm not sure if you have any question at your end, but typically the various questions have come up and they're covered. Thank you everyone for joining. I think if in case if you still have any question, you can post it here. We'll get back to you. Thank you everyone for participating, and we'll be more than happy to connect with each and every one of you in case if you need to understand more in any of the areas, whether it's AIF, PMS, or any question if you have related to the GIFT City fund formation. I just okay, thanks. No, there's no new question here from my side. Thank you, Udit, for your time. Thanks to Aditya. He has left, but he's not there. So we'll end the session now. Thank you and have a good day ahead. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.